All right, the second term is epic hero. Epic hero is a larger-than-life person who embodies the highest ideals of his culture, meaning that rather than just being a commoner or a peasant, they're someone who's important in society. They're someone who represents the things that are valuable, that are important to the culture. So if we're talking about Odysseus in Greek society, it kind of gives you an insight into what ancient Greece was like. If you think about the major characteristics of him, what are the things that are most important? One is that he's loyal, right? And so that tells you right there, because he's loyal to his family, loyal to Penelope, loyal to his crew. He's constantly trying to get back to them, constantly trying to help them. That tells you that's something that's important to the Greeks. Also, his wit and his brains and his cunning ability and war strategy. That tells you, again, that those sorts of things were important to the Greeks. Usually undertakes a quest or journey to achieve something of great value to themselves or to society. So Odysseus in the Odyssey, he's trying to simply get back to his family. And so that tells you that loyalty, again, something that's important to the society. Versus if you consider like Achilles in the Iliad, his quest, his journey was a little different. And even though he was in Troy, not necessarily going on a vast geographical journey like Odysseus, he was on the journey of trying to achieve immortality. And so epic heroes live on after death, meaning they're forever remembered by those who live after them, achieving a type of immortality. Achilles' whole plan was to try and become bigger than just his body, try and become such a great war hero, such a important person in Greek culture, that even though his body would die, that we as members of our society now 3,000 years later would still know his name, still know his story. And the same for Odysseus. The third term is tragic flaw, which is also known as hamartia. A tragic flaw, especially a misperception, a lack of some important insight or some blindness that ironically results from one's own strengths and abilities. So again, we're talking about Odysseus, our main epic hero from the Odyssey. His strength, the one thing he's known for more than anything, is his wisdom and his brains. And so the fact that he's smart is actually kind of what leads to his own tragic flaw. The fact that he, because he's so smart, because he's often able to think his way out of things, because he's able to strategize in other ways that men can't, he kind of builds up this sort of self-confidence, this sort of, I am impervious, I am unable to be hurt by others. And so that ends up becoming his problem. His strength, his brains, leads to his sort of arrogance and his self-confidence that is not necessarily needed. And we'll talk more about that on the next term. But the protagonist frequently possesses some sort of hamartia that causes catastrophic results after he fails to recognize some fact or truth that could have saved him if he'd recognized it earlier. So with Odysseus, again, like if you take the situation with the Cyclops, after telling the Cyclops his name was Nobody, then tricking the Cyclops once he's blinded, after they stabbed him in the eye, the Cyclops starts screaming, Polyphemus starts screaming, nobody has stabbed me, nobody blinded me, nobody has hurt me. And the other Cyclops here, they think, oh, nobody's hurt him. Polyphemus has gone crazy, you got problems. When in reality, that was Odysseus' brains, his cunning, trying to help escape. And then afterwards, once he's out, after he's snuck out under the sheep, and he's out on his ship, he's leaving the island, his hubris, his tragic flaw, coming from his brains, coming from the fact that he was smart and was able to outwit the Cyclops, he feels like he has to let him know. He has to gain recognition for this amazing thing he's done. And so he screams back his name, my name's Odysseus, son of Laertes, from Ithaca. And again, then his crew says, Odysseus, be quiet, don't tempt the Cyclops. Cyclops throws the top of the mountain at him. Odysseus again starts screaming at the Cyclops, taunting him, trying to egg him on. And so that ultimately is what ends up in Poseidon cursing Odysseus and his crew. So that one tragic flaw is what results in the catastrophic result after he fails to recognize. If he had just been quiet, if he hadn't said his name, if he hadn't screamed back at the Cyclops, at Polyphemus, he wouldn't have been cursed by Odysseus. If he hadn't screamed back, I'm sorry, he wouldn't have been cursed by Poseidon. If he hadn't screamed back, his men, they would have gotten home. But because of that, Poseidon knows who he is. Consequently, all of his men end up dying, and Odysseus goes home years later under bitter sail to strange problems at home. So, hubris. This is what I was talking about earlier. Hubris is Odysseus' Marcia. It is his tragic flaw. It's a negative term implying both arrogant, excessive self-pride, or self-confidence. Meaning to be full of hubris is to be extremely cocky. And so this gets Odysseus into some trouble. If he was able to think wisely and to kind of control himself a little better, to not be quite so arrogant in a negative way, he wouldn't get into the situations that he does. Epithet is a short, poetic nickname, often in the form of an adjective or adjectival phrase attached to a normal name. And then the Homeric epithet in classical literature often includes compounds of two words such as fleet-footed Achilles, cow-eyed Hera, great-eyed Athena, wine-dark sea. These ones that are listed right here mostly come from the Iliad. If you look at the epithets in the Odyssey, there's a few ones you'll often see, usually some sort of bright-eyed Athena or sparkling-eyed Athena. Whenever they refer to Hermes, they'll say Hermes, the giant killer. And then with Odysseus, there are several different ones that they use to describe him. And it's interesting, the epithet they use kind of helps to tell you of where you are in the story. So if you think about a bard, a poet 3,000 years ago, the reason they would use these specific epithets is to try and help emphasize a specific characteristic of Odysseus. So for example, you have Odysseus, the son of Laertes, Odysseus, man of twists and turns, Odysseus, the teller of great tales. So these different epithets, there's other ones as well, but they kind of come out at moments to try and emphasize a certain characteristic of his. So like when they're trying to talk about Odysseus and his loyalty to his family, they'll say Odysseus, the son of Laertes. Versus when Odysseus is telling his story to the Phaeacians about all the adventures he's been on, it says Odysseus, the great teller of tales. And then when, in the beginning, when you have the muse first describing him, and then whenever there is the sort of another god speaking about his great adventure, or another person talking about him, it'll be Odysseus, the man of twists and turns. Okay, the one word that is often used to describe Odysseus is that he is cunning. Means characterized by trickery, skill employed in a shrewd or sly manner, as in deceiving, craftiness, guile. He's slick. He can get away with things. Right? He's not going to face someone straight up in a battle. He's going to try and find a way to get himself an edge to guarantee that he wins. You think about how Odysseus in the Iliad helped the Greeks win the Trojan War. It wasn't through brute strength. It was through cunning. It was through shrewd, deceiving, craftiness, guile. It was the Trojan horse where he told everyone, just pretend, go out to sea, and we're going to leave this giant Trojan horse here. We're going to kind of have the special ops of the Greek army hidden inside the Trojan horse. And once they bring us inside thinking it's a gift, thinking the Greeks have left, Trojans are going to have this huge party. They're going to go out drinking. They're going to be having a fun time in the streets, singing, dancing, until essentially they're going to pass out. And at that point, Odysseus and his men pop out. They open the gates for the Greeks who have come back onto the beach, and they have a bloodbath. Kill all of the Trojans. It's over in one night. All because of the trickery, the cunning of Odysseus. That was his plan. So the one word to describe Odysseus more than any other is cunning. This word is also used to describe his wife, Penelope. You think about how she kept the suitors at bay for several years. It was through cunning. It was through trickery. when she told them that she would marry one of them as soon as she finished the shawl for Laertes, Odysseus' son, Odysseus' father, her father-in-law. She would weave during the day and then get closer to the end, and then at night she would undo everything she had sewn that day, everything she had woven that day. And so this went on for several years, tricking the suitors into giving her more time so that she could wait for Odysseus to return. Protagonist. Hope this one's a big review for you. The main character in a work of whom the author focuses most of the narrative attention. Odysseus is your protagonist of the Odyssey. Even though he's an epic hero, he is also the protagonist. These things are not exclusive. He can be one or the other. Some other protagonists you may have read throughout this year. You have Rainsford from The Most Dangerous Game. You have Montresor from The Cask of Amontillado. An epic simile. It's very similar to a regular simile, but an epic because it makes a comparison using like or as. However, unlike a regular simile, which appears in a single sentence, for example, he is like a dog, the epic simile appears in the genre of an epic, and it can be developed at great length, often up to 50 or 100 lines. So an example of an epic simile, this is when Odysseus was blinding the Cyclops in the book 9, in the One-Eyed Giant's Cave. It says, hoisting high that olive stake with its stabbing point straight into the monster's eye, they rammed it hard. I drove my weight on it from above and bored it home as, so he's still using like or as a shipwright. So that would be the end of the simile if it was just a regular one, but since it's an epic simile, they continue to describe, as a shipwright bore his beams with the shipwright's drill, that men below, whipping and strapped back and forth whirl, and the drill keeps twisting faster, never stopping. So we seized our stake from its fiery tip. Or you've got another example, this one coming from when Odysseus was visiting, or going past Scylla. I'm sorry, this is actually from when going to Circe on the island, and so the men some of them have been turned to pigs, and so now they see Odysseus coming. But now as calves and stalls, when cows come home, drove of them herded back from fields to farmyard, once they graze their fill, as all their young calves come frisking out to meet them, bucking out of their pens, lowing nonstop, jostling, rustling round their mothers. So my shipmates there were at the sight of my return, came pressing round me now, streaming tears. So rather than just saying they were like baby cows, at great length describing how similar they were. Right, number 9, alliteration. Repetition of the consonant sound in close proximity to others, beginning several words with the same vowel sound. For instance, the phrase buckets of big blueberries alliterates the consonant B. Alliteration is used a lot throughout the Odyssey. When the Cyclops is eating the men, it says he took bits of man flesh and drank great gulps of whey. So by that repetition of that G sound, great gulps of whey. And then number 10, a theme, a central idea or statement that unifies and controls an entire literary work. The author's way of communicating and sharing ideas, perceptions, or feelings with the reader may not be directly stated in the book, or it may only be implied. So in the Odyssey, some of the themes you see are with age comes wisdom, where Odysseus learns from his mistakes, learns to control his hubris, learns not to react in such a arrogant way as he does when he's younger and earlier on his journey. Also, sort of the choices we make affect who we become. That's another one. And then you've got several other ones dealing with hospitality in the treatment of strangers, the growth. So several themes throughout the Odyssey as well. All right, please remember, if you at any point didn't get any of these, please just pause the video, go back, rewind. You can use this as many times as you need to review. I strongly suggest using this to review for your test for the Odyssey. Thank you.